My name is Clemmie Washington, and I'm 72 years old. I raised 4 children by myself after my husband died young. I worked hard my whole life, and for the past 3 years, my children have treated me like I'm a burden, like I'm poor, like I have nothing to offer them except problems. They were wrong, very wrong. Let me tell you about the moment I proved it. The moment I walked into my living room where all 4 of my children sat waiting to discuss my financial situation. The moment I opened my safe, the safe they didn't even know existed, and watched their faces change from pity to absolute shock. It was a Saturday afternoon. My children had called a family meeting. They said we needed to talk about my future, about my finances, about my options. I knew what that meant. They thought I was broke. They thought I needed their help. They thought they were going to have to take care of their poor, struggling mother. Spurgeon, my oldest son, sat on my couch with his arms crossed. "Mama, we need to have an honest conversation about money. We know things have been hard for you since Daddy died. We know you've been struggling." Alberta, my daughter, nodded sympathetically. "We're not here to judge you, Mama. We're here to help. But we need to know the truth. How bad is it? How much debt are you in?" Vester, my second son, leaned forward. "Mama, we've noticed things. Your car is old. Your house needs repairs. Your clothes are worn. You never go anywhere or do anything. It's clear you don't have money." And Lonnie, my youngest and most spoiled child, added, "We're prepared to help you, Mama. We've been discussing it. We can pitch in, help with your bills, maybe even find you a more affordable place to live. A smaller apartment. Something you can actually afford." I sat in my chair and looked at my 4 children, at their concerned faces, at their pitying expressions, at their certainty that they knew my situation better than I did. "A smaller apartment," I repeated calmly. "Well, yes," Spurgeon said. "Mama, this house is too big for you, too expensive to maintain. If you sold it and moved into a senior apartment, you'd have some money to live on. We could manage it for you. Make sure you don't run out." "Manage it for me," I said, still calm, still composed. "Mama, don't be proud," Alberta said. "We know you have nothing left. It's okay. That's what children are for, to help their parents when they need it." "You think I have nothing left," I said. Not a question, a statement. "We know you don't," Vester said gently. "Mama, you don't have to pretend with us. We've seen the signs. You haven't bought new clothes in years. You eat the same cheap meals every day. You never travel. You never treat yourself. You're barely surviving, and we want to help." I stood up slowly, walked across my living room to the bookshelf, pulled out 3 books from the middle shelf. Behind them was a small wall safe, a safe my children had never seen, had never known about. "Before we continue this conversation," I said, "I want to show you all something." I put in the combination, heard the lock click, opened the door, and pulled out folders, bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, stock certificates, all the proof of what I actually had. "Mama, what is that?" Alberta asked. "This," I said, turning to face them with the folders in my hands, "is my entire fortune. The fortune you didn't know I had. The fortune I've been building and protecting for decades. The fortune that proves I don't have nothing left." I spread the documents on the coffee table in front of them. "This is the statement from my primary savings account. $847,000. Spurgeon's mouth dropped open. "This is my investment portfolio. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Current value, $1.2 million. Alberta made a choking sound. "This is the deed to a rental property I own in Florida, worth approximately $650,000, fully paid off." Vester leaned forward, staring at the papers like they couldn't be real. "This is documentation of my pension, which pays me $4,500 a month. And this is my Social Security, another $2,800 a month. That's over $7,000 a month in income, every month." Lonnie was shaking his head. That's not possible. You said you were struggling, you said." "I never said I was struggling," I interrupted. "You said I was struggling. You assumed. You looked at my old car and my worn clothes and my simple life, and you assumed I was poor. You never asked me. You never checked. You just decided you knew my situation better than I did. The room was completely silent. My 4 children stared at the documents spread across the table, at the proof that their mother, the woman they'd been pitying, the woman they'd been planning to help, was worth over $2.7 million. But why? Alberta finally managed to say. Why do you live like this if you have all that money? Because, I said quietly, I wanted to see who you really were. I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. And now I know. I gathered up the documents, put them back in the safe, locked it, replaced the books. Then I turned to face my children. Now, let's have that honest conversation about my future. But this time, let's be clear about something. I don't need your help. I never did. But you're going to explain to me why you've treated me the way you have for the past 3 years, and why I should ever trust any of you again. If this story has you hooked, you need to subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. We bring you the most dramatic grandmother stories every week. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from: USA, UK, Canada, Jamaica, Kenya. Let us know. Now let's get into this story. But to understand how we got here, how my children came to believe I was poor, and why I let them believe it, I need to take you back to where it all started. Back to 3 years ago, when my husband Pleasant died and everything changed. My husband Pleasant Washington died suddenly 3 years ago. Heart attack. He was only 68. We'd been married for 47 years. Pleasant and I had built a good life together. We'd both worked hard. I was a teacher for 35 years. Pleasant worked for the post office for 40 years. We saved every penny we could, invested wisely, bought property, built wealth slowly and steadily over decades. By the time Pleasant died, we were worth close to $3 million. Not billionaires, not wealthy by rich people's standards, but comfortable, very comfortable. We had more than enough to live on for the rest of our lives. When Pleasant died, he left everything to me. The house, the savings, the investments, the rental property, all of it. His will was clear. Everything to my beloved wife, Clemmie. She knows what to do with it. And I did know what to do with it. I was going to keep living simply, keep managing our money wisely, and eventually leave it to our 4 children when I died. But at Pleasant's funeral, something happened that changed my mind. We were at the repast, the meal after the funeral service. Family and friends had gathered at the church to eat and remember Pleasant. I was exhausted from grief, barely holding myself together. I overheard my children talking in the church kitchen. They thought I couldn't hear them, but I could. Spurgeon was saying, "We need to talk to Mama about money, about what Daddy left her. We need to make sure she manages it properly." "She's not good with finances," Alberta said. "Daddy always handled the money. She probably doesn't even know what she has or how to manage it." Vester added, "We should offer to help her, maybe get power of attorney, make sure she doesn't waste it all or get scammed." "Or we could convince her to distribute it now," Lonnie said. "Why wait until she dies? She doesn't need all that money. She's old. What's she going to do with it? We have families to raise, bills to pay. We could use that money now." "We can't just ask her for the money at Daddy's funeral," Alberta said. "That would look bad. But in a few months, once she's settled, we can bring it up. Talk to her about planning for the future or making sure the family is taken care of." "Exactly," Spurgeon agreed. "And if she won't give it to us voluntarily, we can suggest she's not capable of managing it herself, that she needs our help. Older people are easily convinced they can't handle things on their own." I stood outside that kitchen door, listening to my children plan how to manipulate me out of my money. These were the children I'd raised, the children I'd sacrificed for, the children I'd put through college and helped start their careers. And they were discussing me like I was an incompetent old woman who needed to be managed. That's when I decided I wasn't going to tell them about the money. I wasn't going to show them the bank statements or the investment portfolios. I was going to let them think I had nothing, and I was going to watch how they treated me when they believed I was poor. Because I needed to know, did my children love me, or did they just love my money? Over the next few months, I played the part perfectly. I wore old clothes, drove my 15-year-old car, complained about the cost of groceries, made it seem like I was struggling financially. My children responded exactly as I'd expected, but not in a good way. At first, they offered to help. "Mama, if you need money for bills, just let us know. We can pitch in." But I'd politely decline. No, I'm managing, just have to be careful, that's all." Then the visits became less frequent. Suddenly, they were always too busy to come see me, too busy to call, too busy to include me in family events. Spurgeon stopped inviting me to Sunday dinners at his house. "Mama, we're just doing something small this week. Nothing fancy. You'd probably find it boring." Alberta stopped asking me to babysit my grandchildren. "Mama, I don't want to burden you. I know you're tired. I'll just hire someone." Vester stopped calling altogether. When I'd call him, he'd be brief. "Hey, Mama, everything okay? Great, I'm kind of busy right now. I'll call you back later." He never did. And Lonnie started making excuses whenever I suggested we do something together. "Mama, I wish I could, but that costs money. And I know you're on a tight budget. Maybe another time." It hurt, more than I can describe, to watch my children slowly distance themselves from me because they thought I had nothing to offer them anymore. But I told myself, this is a test. I need to know the truth. I need to see who they really are. About 6 months after Pleasant died, things got worse. My granddaughter Aura was getting married. Spurgeon's daughter. I'd always been close to her. She'd been my first grandchild. I'd helped raise her when Spurgeon and his wife were working. I got an invitation to the wedding, but it came with a note. "Grandma, I'm so excited for you to come to my wedding. Just wanted to let you know, there's no pressure to give a gift. Times are hard for you right now, and we understand. Your presence is present enough." Your presence is present enough. That's what people say when they're trying to be kind to someone who's poor, someone who can't afford to give a real gift. I sat in my house, holding that note, crying. Not because I couldn't afford a gift. I could have bought her a car if I wanted to. But because my own granddaughter, who I'd loved and cared for her entire life, thought I was too broke to give her a wedding present. And worse, she was okay with it. She was fine with the idea that Grandma was poor. She wasn't concerned about me. She wasn't asking if I needed help. She was just making sure I knew I didn't have to embarrass myself by giving a cheap gift. I went to that wedding. I wore an old dress from 5 years earlier. I gave Aura a $50 gift card, the kind of gift you give when you can barely afford anything. And I watched my family look at me with pity. "Poor Grandma Clemmie," I heard someone whisper. "She can barely afford to take care of herself, but she still came to the wedding. That's so sweet." Sweet, like I was a charity case, like they were being generous by letting me attend. The breaking point came 1 year after Pleasant died. It was my 71st birthday. I'd always had big birthday celebrations. Pleasant would throw parties. My children would come. My grandchildren would make cards. It was a day that made me feel loved. But on my 71st birthday, nothing happened. No party, no cards, no calls in the morning, nothing. Finally, around 8 p.m., Alberta called. "Oh, Mama, happy birthday, I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. Things have been so busy. How are you?" "I'm fine," I said, "just sitting here alone." "Oh, Mama, I'm sorry. We should have planned something. But you know how it is. Money's tight for everyone right now. We didn't want to make you feel bad by having a big celebration you couldn't contribute to." Couldn't contribute to. My own birthday party, and they didn't have it because they thought I couldn't afford to chip in. "I understand," I said, even though I didn't, even though it was breaking my heart. "We'll do something small next year," Alberta promised. "Something that doesn't cost much, maybe just a family dinner at your house. You can make your famous fried chicken. That won't cost too much, right?" After I hung up, I sat in my dark house and cried. My children had forgotten my birthday because they thought I was poor, because I wasn't worth celebrating when I couldn't afford to participate in my own party. That's when I decided the test was over. They'd failed, all of them. And it was time to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Over the next 2 years, things continued in the same pattern. My children visited less and less, called less and less, included me less and less in family events. They'd make excuses. Mama, we're going on vacation, but we didn't tell you because we know you can't afford to come. Or, Mama, we're having a family dinner at a nice restaurant, but we didn't invite you because we know the prices would stress you out. They genuinely believed they were being kind, sparing me the pain of knowing about things I couldn't afford. But what they were really doing was erasing me from the family, pushing me out, treating me like a burden they couldn't wait to be free from. Meanwhile, I lived my simple life. I kept my house clean but didn't make repairs. I drove my old car. I wore my old clothes. I went to church and the grocery store and nowhere else. I made myself as small and invisible as possible. And I waited for the right moment to reveal the truth. That moment came 3 years after Pleasant died, when Spurgeon called me and said, "Mama, we need to have a family meeting. We need to talk about your situation, about what we're going to do with you." What we're going to do with you, like I was a problem to be solved. "Okay," I said, "come over Saturday, we'll talk." And that's how we got to the moment I opened the safe, the moment I showed them the truth, the moment their entire understanding of their mother and themselves shattered. After I showed them the documents, after they'd stared in shock at the proof of my wealth, I sat back down in my chair. "Questions?" I asked. Spurgeon found his voice first. "Mama, this doesn't make sense. If you have all this money, why have you been living like you're poor?" "I wanted to see who you really were," I said simply. "I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing, and you showed me." "We were trying to help you," Alberta protested. "No, you weren't. You were avoiding me. You stopped inviting me to family events because you thought I was too poor to participate. You forgot my birthday because I wasn't worth celebrating. You pushed me out of the family because you saw me as a burden." "That's not fair," Vester started. "Isn't it? Tell me, Vester, when's the last time you called me? When's the last time you came to visit me? When's the last time you treated me like I mattered?" He had no answer. I looked at each of my children. "I heard you, at your father's funeral, in the church kitchen, talking about my money, about how to get it from me, about how I was probably too incompetent to manage it myself. You weren't grieving your father. You were planning how to get your hands on his money." They all looked down, ashamed, caught. "So I decided to test you," I continued, "to see if you loved me or if you just loved what I could give you. And you failed. All of you failed." "Mama, we're sorry," Alberta said, tears in her eyes. "We didn't mean." "Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. You made your choices based on what you thought I was worth. And when you thought I was worth nothing, you treated me like nothing." Lonnie, who'd been silent this whole time, finally spoke. "So what happens now? Are you going to cut us out of your will?" I smiled sadly. "Lonnie, even now that's what you're worried about. The money, not our relationship, not the hurt you caused me, just the money." "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did. And that's the problem. That's always been the problem." I stood up again. "This meeting is over. You came here thinking you were going to help your poor, struggling mother. Instead, you learned that your mother is richer than any of you. And more importantly, you learned that money doesn't make you family. Love does, respect does, showing up does. And none of you have done any of that for 3 years." "Mama, please," Spurgeon started. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "All of you, get out. And don't come back until you can tell me honestly why you treated me the way you did, and what you're going to do to make it right." They left, one by one, shamefaced and shocked, and I stood in my living room looking at the safe I'd opened and thinking about the family I'd exposed. But this was just the beginning, because what my children didn't know was that there was more to this story, more they hadn't discovered, more that would shock them even more than the safe. And in the coming weeks, they were going to learn exactly what happens when you underestimate a woman who spent a lifetime being underestimated. $2.7 million. If you're shocked, smash that like button and subscribe immediately. Turn on notifications and comment, where are you watching from and what would you have done? After my children left that Saturday afternoon, I sat in my quiet house for a long time. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd seen the truth. They knew I wasn't the poor, helpless woman they'd imagined. But another part of me felt heartbroken, because the looks on their faces hadn't been shame or remorse. They'd been shock and calculation. I could see them already doing the math, already figuring out what this meant for them, already planning their next move. I was right. Sunday morning, my phone started ringing, first Spurgeon, then Alberta, then Vester, then Lonnie, all of them wanting to talk, wanting to explain, wanting to make things right. I didn't answer. Let them leave voicemails. Let them text. Let them realize that money doesn't buy instant forgiveness. By Sunday afternoon, they were at my door, all four of them, together. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "Mama, please," Spurgeon said. "We need to talk. We need to apologize properly." "You had 3 years to apologize. You didn't." "Because we didn't realize," Alberta started. "You didn't realize I had money, so you only apologize to people who are rich. Is that how it works?" They looked at each other, uncomfortable. "That's not what she meant," Vester said. "Mama, we know we messed up. We know we treated you badly. And we want to make it right. Please, just let us come in and talk." I stepped aside, let them in, but I didn't make it comfortable. Didn't offer them drinks or snacks, just pointed to the couch and sat in my chair, waiting. Spurgeon spoke first. He'd always been the spokesperson. "Mama, we spent all night talking about this, about what happened, about how we treated you, and you're right, we were wrong. We let money, or what we thought was your lack of money, affect how we treated you, and that was wrong." "Keep going," I said. "We got caught up in our own lives," Alberta added. "Our own struggles. We have bills, mortgages, kids in college. Money is tight for all of us. And when we thought you were struggling too, we couldn't handle it. We couldn't handle having to worry about you on top of everything else. So you abandoned me instead," I said flatly. "We didn't abandon you." "Yes, you did. You stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped including me in family events. You erased me from your lives because you thought I was poor. That's abandonment." Vester leaned forward. "Mama, we're sorry, truly sorry. We want to make it right. We want to be better. Just tell us what we need to do." "Start by telling me the truth," I said. "Why are you really here? Is it because you actually care about repairing our relationship? Or is it because you just found out I have $2.7 million? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Finally, Lonnie, always the most honest because he was the worst liar, said quietly, "Can it be both?" "No," I said. "It can't. Either you love me as a person or you love me as a bank account. You can't have both if the first one only shows up when you discover the second one exists." "That's not fair, Mama," Alberta said. "We've always loved you." "Have you? Because for 3 years you treated me like I was worthless, like I was an embarrassment, like I was someone to be pitied and avoided. That's not love. That's contempt." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Inside were documents, printed emails, text messages, screenshots, all the evidence I'd been collecting for 3 years. "You want to know what I did while you were all avoiding me?" I said. "I documented everything. Every time you canceled plans with me, every time you made an excuse not to visit, every time you excluded me from family events because you thought I couldn't afford to participate." I spread the papers on the coffee table, just like I'd done with the financial documents. "Here's a text from you, Spurgeon, telling your wife that you didn't want to invite me to Aura's graduation party because Mama can't afford to bring a nice gift, and I don't want her to feel bad." Spurgeon's face went red. "Here's an email from you, Alberta, telling your daughter that Grandma is going through hard times, so don't ask her for birthday money this year." Alberta looked away. "Here's a voicemail from you, Vester, telling me you couldn't come visit because you were too busy. But I found out later, through Facebook, that you weren't too busy. You went to a baseball game with your friends that same day." Vester stared at his hands. "And Lonnie, here's a recording of you telling your brother that I was becoming a burden, and that we needed to figure out what to do with her, before I became too much of a problem. Lonnie's eyes went wide. You recorded me. You were at my house, talking about me in the next room. Yes, I recorded you, because I needed to remember. I needed proof that this wasn't just in my head, that you really were treating me this way. I gathered up the papers. You want to make it right? You want to repair our relationship? First, you need to admit what you did, not just vaguely apologize, actually admit it, say the words. They looked at each other. None of them wanted to be the first. Finally, Spurgeon spoke. I treated you differently when I thought you were poor. I excluded you from family events because I didn't want to deal with your financial problems. I saw you as a burden instead of as my mother, and that was wrong. Alberta went next. I stopped asking you to babysit because I thought you couldn't afford to have the kids around. I stopped inviting you to things because I thought you'd feel bad about not being able to afford them. I pushed you away instead of including you, and that was wrong. Vester took a breath. I stopped calling and visiting because it was easier to avoid you than to face the fact that you might need help I didn't want to give. I chose comfort over family, and that was wrong. Lonnie was last. I complained about you being a burden. I talked about what to do with you like you were a problem to solve instead of a person to love. I saw you as an obligation instead of as my mother, and that was wrong. The room was quiet. My children had finally said out loud what they'd been doing for 3 years. Thank you, I said. Now, here's what happens next. I stood up and walked to the window, looked out at my yard. The yard Pleasant and I had planted together 40 years ago. You four think that now that you know I have money, everything can go back to normal, that we can just pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. But that's not how this works. We know it's not that simple, Alberta started. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be here the day after I exposed you. You'd be giving me space, giving me time to process what happened. But instead, you're here, pushing for reconciliation, because you're afraid I'm going to cut you out of the will. That's not why we're here, Spurgeon protested. Isn't it? Lonnie, what was the first thing you asked yesterday after I showed you the safe? Are you going to cut us out of your will? That's what matters to you, not my hurt, not the damage to our relationship, the money. Mama, that's not fair. Life isn't fair, I said, my voice rising. Life isn't fair when your children abandon you because they think you're poor. Life isn't fair when you're excluded from your own family because you're seen as a burden. Life isn't fair when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally only love you when you're useful to them. My children sat in stunned silence. I'd never raised my voice to them like this before. I took a breath, calmed myself. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to go home. And you're going to spend the next month thinking about what you did, really thinking, not just feeling bad that you got caught, actually thinking about why you treated me the way you did. A month, Vester said. Mama, that's... A month is nothing compared to 3 years, I interrupted. After a month, if you've genuinely thought about this, if you've genuinely changed, then we can talk about rebuilding our relationship. But it's going to be on my terms, not yours. What terms? Alberta asked nervously. You'll find out when the month is up. Now leave, all of you. They left reluctantly, looking back at me with confused, worried faces. They'd come expecting forgiveness. They'd gotten a timeout instead. The month that followed was the quietest of my life. No calls from my children, no visits, no texts. I'd told them not to contact me, and for once they listened. But I wasn't idle during that month. I had things to do, plans to execute, lessons to teach. The first thing I did was call a family lawyer. Not to write my children out of the will, not yet anyway, but to make some changes. Some conditions, some requirements. Mrs. Washington, the lawyer said, what you're proposing is unusual. Are you sure? I'm completely sure. My children need to learn that wealth comes with responsibility. That family means more than money. And if they can't learn that, then they don't deserve what I'm leaving them. The second thing I did was reach out to my grandchildren, the ones who were adults now. I'd been distant from them too, because their parents had kept me at arm's length. I called Aura, Spurgeon's daughter who'd gotten married. "Ora, baby, it's Grandma. Can we have lunch?" We met at a restaurant. She looked nervous. "Grandma, my dad told me what happened. About the safe, about the money. I had no idea." "I know you didn't," I said gently. "That's why I want to talk to you, because you're not responsible for what your father did. But I need to know something. Did you really think I was poor?" She looked down at her plate. "Yes, Dad told us you were struggling, that you couldn't afford things, so we tried not to ask you for anything. We thought we were being considerate." "And my birthday present, the $50 gift card." Aura's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, I felt terrible about that, but Dad said you could barely afford to come to the wedding. He said we shouldn't expect anything from you. I didn't know what else to do." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Baby, it's okay. You were trying to be kind. You didn't know your father was lying to you about my situation." "Why did he do that? Why did they all act like you were poor when you weren't?" "Because people's true character shows when they think you have nothing," I said. "Your father and his siblings showed me who they really were, and now I know." Over the next few weeks, I met with each of my adult grandchildren. Aura, Desai, Rena, Eula, told them the truth, showed them the evidence, let them see what their parents had done. They were shocked, angry at their parents, apologetic to me. "You don't need to apologize," I told each of them. "You didn't do anything wrong, but I want you to learn something from this. I want you to learn that how you treat people when they have nothing shows who you really are." 3 weeks into the month, Spurgeon showed up at my door unannounced. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved, dark circles under his eyes. "Mama, I know you said not to contact you, but I can't wait another week. I need to talk to you." "This better be important," I said, not inviting him in. "It is. Mama, I've been doing what you asked, thinking about what I did, really thinking, and I realized something terrible." "What?" "I became my father." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Grandpa, your father, remember what he did to you?" I remembered. My father had been a hard man, a cruel man. When I married Pleasant, who my father thought wasn't good enough for me, he cut me off, disowned me, said I was making a mistake and he wouldn't support it. We didn't speak for 15 years, only reconciled shortly before he died. "I became him," Spurgeon said, tears running down his face. "I cut you off just like he cut you off. I decided you weren't worth my time or effort. I justified it by telling myself I was busy, that money was tight, that it was complicated. But the truth is, I just didn't want to be bothered with you, just like Grandpa didn't want to be bothered with you when you married Dad." I felt my own eyes watering, because he was right. The parallel was exact. "And Mama, you know what the worst part is? I used to hate Grandpa for what he did to you. Used to think he was a terrible person for abandoning his own daughter. And then I grew up and did the exact same thing. I became the thing I hated." He sat down on my porch steps. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to become a better person. But I know I can't keep being who I've been. I can't keep being the kind of son who only shows up when there's something in it for him." I sat down next to him on the steps. "Spurgeon, do you know why I forgave your grandfather before he died?" "No." "Because he apologized, really apologized. Not because he wanted something, not because he was afraid of missing out on an inheritance, but because he genuinely realized what he'd done was wrong, and he spent his last years trying to make it right." "How did he make it right?" "By showing up, by being present, by treating me like I mattered, not because of what I could give him, but because I was his daughter and he loved me. That's all I ever wanted from him, and that's all I want from you." Spurgeon wiped his eyes. "I don't know if I can be that person." "Then you need to figure it out. Because Spurgeon, I'm 72 years old. I don't have another 15 years to wait for you to become the son I raised you to be. Either you change now, or you don't change. But I won't spend what's left of my life begging my children to love me." We sat in silence for a while. Then Spurgeon stood up. "The month isn't over yet. I'm going to keep thinking, keep working on myself. And when the month is up, I hope I'll be ready to show you I've changed. For real this time." He left, and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset, thinking about my father, thinking about my son, thinking about patterns that repeat across generations. The month ended on a Tuesday. I told my children to meet me at 2 p.m. at the lawyer's office. They all showed up, looking nervous, looking like they'd actually spent the month doing what I'd asked. The lawyer, Mr. Wilbert Stone, greeted us. "Good afternoon, everyone. Mrs. Washington has asked me to share some information with you regarding her estate and some changes she's made." My children exchanged worried glances. "First," Mr. Stone continued, "Mrs. Washington wants you to know that her will has been updated. However, she has not disinherited any of you." I saw the relief on their faces. They'd been terrified I was cutting them out completely. "However," Mr. Stone said, "there are now conditions attached to your inheritances." "Conditions?" Alberta asked. "Yes, conditions that must be met before any of you receive a single penny from your mother's estate." I smiled slightly, because this was the lesson they really needed to learn. And when they heard what the conditions were, their faces told me everything I needed to know about whether they'd actually learned anything at all. There are conditions. If you're desperate to know what they are, smash that like button and subscribe. Turn on all notifications. And comment, where are you watching from? And what conditions would you set? This is getting intense. Mr. Stone opened a folder and pulled out documents. He handed one to each of my children. "These are the conditions your mother has set for your inheritances," he said. "Let me read them aloud so there's no confusion." My children stared at the papers, but Mr. Stone continued before they could read them themselves. "Condition 1, each of you must spend a minimum of 8 hours per week with your mother for the next 2 years. Not visits where you check your phone or watch TV. Quality time, conversations, activities, being present." Spurgeon's eyebrows went up. 8 hours a week, that's 32 hours a month, I interrupted. Less than 1 day, less time than you spend watching football every weekend. If you can't give me that, you don't deserve what I'm leaving you. Condition 2, Mr. Stone continued, each of you must attend family therapy sessions, together and individually, for a minimum of 1 year, to address the family dynamics that led to this situation. Therapy, Vester said. Mama, we don't need therapy. Yes, you do. You need to understand why you did what you did, why money became more important than family, why you treated me like I was disposable. A therapist will help you see that. Condition 3, Mr. Stone said. Each of you must write a detailed letter of apology. Not to your mother, she'll get copies, but that's not the point. These letters will be written to your own children, explaining what you did, why it was wrong, what you've learned. Your mother wants your children to understand that money doesn't define worth. Alberta's hands were shaking. You want us to tell our children what we did. To admit you're not perfect. Yes, I want your children to learn from your mistakes. I want them to see that even parents mess up, and I want them to know what real accountability looks like. Lonnie was reading ahead in the document. His face went pale. Mama, this says. Condition 4, Mr. Stone said. Each of you must complete 200 hours of community service working with elderly people. Nursing homes, senior centers, meal delivery programs. You will spend time with elderly people who have nothing, who have been abandoned by their families, and you will see what it feels like to be on the other side. The room was silent. My children stared at the papers like they were in a foreign language. Condition 5, Mr. Stone continued, and this is the most important one. For the next 2 years, you will not know how much money you're inheriting. You will not know if it's being divided equally. You will not know if your mother is leaving you $10,000 or $1 million. You will complete all these conditions without knowing what you're getting. Just like you should have loved your mother for 2 years without knowing what she had. That's not fair, Lonnie burst out. How are we supposed to? Supposed to what? I asked calmly. Love me without knowing what I'm worth. Treat me with respect without knowing what's in it for you. That's exactly the point, Lonnie. That's the whole point. Spurgeon was reading the document carefully. And if we don't complete these conditions, then you get nothing, Mr. Stone said. Your portion of the inheritance goes to charity. Your mother has specified several organizations that help elderly people who have been financially abused by their families. Your money will go to help people like the person you treated your mother as. But that's, Alberta started. Fair, I finished. Yes, it is, because here's what you need to understand. I don't owe you anything. I worked for this money, I saved it, I invested it, and I get to decide what happens to it when I die. If you want it, you earn it, not by being born, not by being related to me, but by proving that you value me as a person, not as a bank account. Vester stood up suddenly. This is manipulation. You're using money to control us, to make us dance like puppets. Sit down, I said coldly. You want to talk about manipulation? Let's talk about how you manipulated me. How you and your siblings stood in that church kitchen at your father's funeral and discussed how to get my money. How to convince me I was incompetent. How to get power of attorney over me. That's manipulation. That was different. How was it different? You wanted to use legal means to control me and my money. I'm using legal means to ensure that if you get my money, you've actually earned it by being decent human beings. If anything, my conditions are more honest than your plan ever was. Vester sat back down, looking angry but defeated. Alberta spoke up, her voice small. Mama, I understand why you're doing this. I do, but some of these conditions, 8 hours a week, I have a job, I have kids, I don't know if I can. Can't, I interrupted. Or won't. Alberta, you found time to go to book club twice a month. You found time to go to the gym 4 times a week. You found time for girls' trips and shopping and brunches with friends. But you can't find 8 hours a week for your mother. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. She looked down, tears forming. Spurgeon cleared his throat. Mama, can I say something? Go ahead. I think these conditions are fair, hard but fair. And I think we need them. I've spent the last month thinking about what I did, really thinking, and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of the son I've been, the father I've been teaching my kids by example that people only matter if they're useful. These conditions, they're not punishment. They're an opportunity to become the people we should have been all along. I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe Spurgeon really had changed. But Lonnie wasn't convinced. I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. Mama, you can keep your money. I don't need it bad enough to jump through all these hoops. Fine, I said. Then you're out. Mr. Stone, please note that Lonnie has declined to participate. His portion will be distributed among the remaining heirs who complete the conditions, with the standard percentage going to charity. Lonnie's face went red. You can't just... I can, and I did. You just said you don't want to participate, so you're out, leave. But I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. You're not willing to spend time with me, go to therapy, do community service, or write a letter to your children unless you know for sure it's worth a lot of money. That tells me you haven't learned anything, so you're out. Lonnie looked at his siblings for support. None of them met his eyes. Fine, he said, standing up. Keep your money. I don't need you or your conditions or any of it. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The remaining 3 sat in silence. Anyone else want to leave? I asked. Now's your chance. They shook their heads. Good, then here's what happens next. Over the next 3 months, my 3 remaining children worked to meet the conditions, and I got to see who they really were, who was genuinely trying to change, and who was just going through the motions. Spurgeon was the first to start the community service. He signed up to deliver meals to homebound elderly people 3 times a week. I didn't ask him about it. I heard from the program coordinator. Mrs. Washington, I just wanted to let you know, your son Spurgeon has been extraordinary. He doesn't just drop off meals and leave. He stays, talks to people, listens to their stories. Some of these people haven't had a real conversation in weeks. He's making a real difference. I felt pride, real pride. My son was actually learning. Alberta started the therapy first, both individual sessions and family sessions. After her 3rd session, she called me crying. Mama, I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you. The therapist asked me to imagine how I'd feel if my own daughter treated me the way I treated you. And I couldn't stop crying. Because if Desai did to me what I did to you, it would destroy me. That's what empathy feels like, I said gently. You're learning. Vester struggled the most. He showed up for the required 8 hours each week, but he was often distracted, checking his phone, making excuses to leave early. After 6 weeks of this, I confronted him. Vester, you're meeting the letter of the conditions, but not the spirit. You're physically present, but mentally absent. That's not good enough. Mama, I'm trying. No, you're not. You're doing the minimum required to get the inheritance, but you're not actually trying to rebuild our relationship. And if you keep this up, I'll recommend to Mr. Stone that you be disqualified from the inheritance despite technically meeting the conditions. His eyes went wide. Can you do that? It's my money. I can do whatever I want. And Vester, I'd rather give everything to charity than give it to someone who's just pretending to care about me. That conversation changed something. The next week, Vester showed up and said, Mama, I want to start over. I want to actually try. Will you teach me how? How to what? How to be a good son, because clearly I don't know how. We started small. He came over and we cooked dinner together. We talked, really talked about his life, his struggles, his fears. We watched old family videos. We looked at photo albums. We remembered pleasant together. Slowly, Vester started to open up, started to be vulnerable, started to be real. 6 months into the 2-year condition period, something happened that I didn't expect. Lonnie came back. He showed up at my door one evening, looking thinner, looking tired, looking broken. Mama, can I talk to you? I let him in. I've been thinking about what happened, he said. About what I said about walking away, and I was wrong, I was so wrong. What changed your mind? I lost my job 3 months ago. I've been looking for work but can't find anything. And Mama, for the first time in my life, I know what it feels like to have nothing, to feel worthless, to feel like people are judging you based on what you have instead of who you are. He sat down heavily. I've been living off credit cards, running out of money, and the first thing I thought was, I wish I hadn't walked away from Mama's inheritance, which is exactly the wrong lesson, which is exactly what you were trying to teach me. Keep going, I said. The right lesson is, I should have done those things anyway, not for money, but because you're my mother and I love you, or should love you, or want to learn how to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Tears were running down his face. Mama, I know I messed up, I know I walked away, but can I come back? Not to the inheritance, I don't care about that anymore, just to the family, to you, can I try again? I looked at my youngest son, the one who'd always been spoiled, the one who'd always taken the easy way, the one who'd walked away when things got hard. And I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine remorse. Yes, I said, you can try again. But Lonnie, if you walk away again, if you give up again, that's it. This is your last chance. I won't walk away, I promise. Over the next year, all 4 of my children worked to complete the conditions. Some days were good, some days were hard. There were setbacks, there were arguments. There were moments when I wondered if any of them would make it the full 2 years. But something remarkable happened. They changed, really changed. Spurgeon became the son I'd always hoped he'd be. Present, caring, thoughtful. He brought his family to visit every week. He called just to talk. He asked about my life, my health, my needs. Alberta worked through her issues in therapy. Learned to prioritize relationships over obligations. Learned to be present instead of always rushing to the next thing. She started bringing her daughters over to cook with me, to learn my recipes, to hear my stories. Vester learned to be vulnerable, to admit when he needed help, to ask for advice instead of pretending he had everything figured out. We grew closer than we'd ever been because he finally let me see the real him. And Lonnie was the biggest surprise. He threw himself into the community service, found purpose in helping others, eventually got a new job working with a nonprofit that helped elderly people navigate financial challenges. He'd found his calling. They all wrote their letters to their children, letters admitting their mistakes, letters explaining what they'd learned, letters promising to be better. I read copies of each letter and I cried, because they were real. They were honest. They were vulnerable. My children were finally becoming the people I'd raised them to be. The 2 years passed. We had family dinners every Sunday. We went on trips together. We celebrated holidays. We rebuilt what had been broken. And finally, the day came. The day when Mr. Stone called us all back to his office to reveal what they'd been working toward, what they'd been earning. They were all nervous, even though they'd changed, even though our relationships had been restored. They still wanted to know, what was the inheritance? How much were they getting? We sat in Mr. Stone's office, my 4 children, me, the lawyer. "First," Mr. Stone said, "I want to confirm that all 4 of you have successfully completed the conditions. The required time, the therapy, the community service, the letters, everything, correct." They nodded. "Good, then let's discuss the inheritance." He pulled out documents. Mrs. Washington's estate, as of today, is valued at approximately $2.9 million. It's grown over the past 2 years through continued investments. My children sat perfectly still, waiting. "The estate will be divided as follows," Mr. Stone continued. 25% to charity, 25% to a trust fund for the grandchildren's education and futures, and the remaining 50%, approximately $1.45 million, to be divided equally among the 4 children. Quick math, about $362,500 each. "However," Mr. Stone said, "there's one more thing." My children tensed. There was always one more thing. "Mrs. Washington has one final condition," Mr. Stone said, "and this one you won't find out about until after she's passed. It's sealed, it's secret, and it could change everything." "What kind of condition?" Spurgeon asked nervously. I smiled. "The kind that ensures you keep being the people you've become. The kind that means you can't just go back to your old ways the moment you get the money. But you won't know what it is until I'm gone, so you'll just have to keep being good children for the rest of my life, not knowing if the final condition will change everything." They stared at me, trying to figure out if I was serious. I was completely serious. But there was something else they didn't know, something bigger, something that would shock them even more than the safe, and they were about to find out what it was. "There's a secret condition. If you're on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe now. Turn on all notifications. And comment, where are you watching from? And what do you think the secret is?" 5 years after I opened that safe, my life looked completely different. My children were different. Our relationships were different. Everything had changed. But before I tell you about the secret condition, the one my children still don't know about, I need to tell you about what happened during those 5 years, because that's where the real story is. After the 2-year condition period ended, my children didn't go back to their old ways. I'd worried they might. Worried that once they knew they'd secured their inheritance, they'd stop trying, stop showing up, stop caring. But they didn't. They kept coming, kept calling, kept being present. Spurgeon and I started a tradition. Every Saturday morning, we'd go to breakfast together, just the 2 of us. We'd talk about everything, his work, his family, his struggles, his victories. He'd ask me for advice, actually listen to it, actually value my opinion. Alberta brought her daughters over every Sunday to cook with me. We'd make old family recipes. I'd tell stories about Pleasant, about their grandfather, about family history. The girls would record me on their phones. "For posterity, Grandma, so we never forget." Vester and I started going to a book club together. Every month, we'd read the same book and discuss it. He valued my perspective, introduced me to his friends, made me feel included in his life. And Lonnie thrived in his work with the nonprofit. He'd come over twice a week, sometimes just to sit on my porch and talk. He'd tell me about the elderly people he was helping, ask me for advice on how to reach them. He'd become passionate about preventing elder financial abuse. "Mama," he said one evening, "I'm writing a handbook for families about how to talk about money, how to support elderly relatives without exploiting them, about treating people with dignity regardless of their financial situation. Will you help me write it?" Yes, I said, proud beyond words. I'll help you. We wrote that handbook together. It got published. It's being used by senior centers and nonprofits across the country. Lonnie dedicated it to my mother, who taught me that a person's worth isn't measured in dollars. 3 years after the conditions ended, I did something my children didn't expect. I started spending my money on myself, lavishly. I bought a new car, a nice one, a luxury sedan that drove like a dream. I renovated my house. New kitchen, new bathrooms, new furniture made it beautiful. I started traveling. Europe, Asia, Africa, places pleasant and I had always dreamed of visiting but never did. I bought myself jewelry, real jewelry. The kind I'd never owned because I was always saving, always being practical. I got my hair done at an expensive salon every week, bought beautiful clothes, started going to the theater, to concerts, to fancy restaurants. My children were shocked. "Mama, what are you doing?" Alberta asked when she saw my new living room furniture. "I'm living," I said simply. I spent 50 years saving, being practical, denying myself things because I was always planning for the future. Well, I'm 77 years old. This is the future, and I'm going to enjoy it. But the inheritance, Vester started. "Will be smaller," I finished. "Yes, every dollar I spend is a dollar you won't inherit. Does that bother you?" There was a pause, then Spurgeon laughed. "You're testing us again, aren't you?" "Maybe, or maybe I'm just living my life the way I want to live it. The question is, does it bother you that I'm spending your inheritance?" "It's not our inheritance," Lonnie said firmly. "It's your money. You earned it. You should spend it however you want. If that means traveling the world and buying fancy furniture, good for you." "Exactly," Alberta agreed. "Mama, you've earned the right to enjoy your money. Don't you dare feel guilty about it." I smiled. They'd passed the test. They'd proven that they really had changed, that they valued me more than they valued my money. But the truth was, I wasn't just spending for fun. I was spending with purpose, and that purpose was about to become clear. 4 years after the conditions ended, I gathered my children for another family meeting. But this time, it wasn't about them. It was about the grandchildren. "I've been thinking about your children," I said. "My grandchildren, about their futures, about what I can do to help them that actually helps them instead of spoiling them or making them entitled." "Okay," Spurgeon said cautiously. "I've set up education trusts for all of them, college paid for, graduate school if they want it, trade school if they prefer. Whatever path they choose, it's covered." "Mama, that's incredibly generous," Alberta said. "But," I continued, "there are conditions. The same conditions I gave you, adapted for them. They have to maintain relationships with family. They have to do community service. They have to learn about money management. They have to work part-time during school to understand the value of earning money. And they have to write essays every year about what they're learning." "Why?" Vester asked. "Because I don't want to raise a generation of entitled children who think money just appears. I want them to understand what I learned, what you learned. That wealth is about more than money. It's about character. It's about relationships. It's about contribution." I pulled out more documents. "I've also made donations in each grandchild's name to causes they care about. Aura wanted to help animals. I donated $50,000 to the animal shelter in her name. Desai wanted to help hungry children. I donated $50,000 to the food bank in her name. Each grandchild got to choose a cause, and I made a major donation." "Why are you telling us this?" Lonnie asked. "Because I want you to understand what I'm doing with the money. I'm not hoarding it. I'm not sitting on it. I'm using it to make a difference, to teach lessons, to build character, and yes, to enjoy my life. And when I die, there will still be plenty left for you. But it won't be $2.9 million anymore. It might be $1.5 million or less because I'm living." My children looked at each other. Then Spurgeon spoke. "Mama, we don't care how much is left. We care that you're happy, that you're living the life you deserve. After everything you've done for us, after everything you've taught us, the least we can do is celebrate you spending your money on yourself." They all agreed, and I really knew they meant it. 5 years after opening the safe, I'm 77 years old. I've traveled to 15 countries. I've donated over $500,000 to charities. I've spoiled myself in ways I never imagined. And my relationship with my children is better than it's ever been. Not because they're waiting for an inheritance, but because we genuinely love each other. Because they value me as a person. Because we've built something real. But there was still that secret condition. The one Mr. Stone had mentioned 5 years earlier. The one my children still didn't know about. Last month, I decided it was time to tell them. Not because I'm dying, I'm healthy as a horse, but because I wanted them to know, wanted them to understand the final test. I called another family meeting. All 4 children, all the adult grandchildren, everyone together. 5 years ago, I began, Mr. Stone told you there was one final secret condition, something you wouldn't know until after I died, something that could change everything. They all tensed. After 5 years, they'd almost forgotten about it. I'm going to tell you what it is, right now, while I'm still alive, because I want you to understand why I did what I did. Okay, Spurgeon said nervously. The secret condition is this. After I die, Mr. Stone will give each of you an envelope. Inside that envelope will be a letter I've written to you. And in that letter, I will tell you whether you passed or failed the final test. What test? Alberta asked. The test of whether you stayed good children because it was the right thing to do or because you were hopping for money. The test of whether you truly changed or whether you were just pretending. The test of whether your love for me was real. But how will you know? Vester asked. How can you judge that from beyond the grave? Because I've been watching. For 5 years, I've been documenting everything, every visit, every phone call, every action, every choice. And based on that documentation, I've written your letters. Some of you will pass. Some of you might fail, but you won't know until I'm gone. The room was silent. And here's the thing, I continued. The ones who pass will get their full inheritance. The ones who fail will get nothing. Their portion will go to charity. Even after 5 years of good behavior, even after completing all the conditions, you could still lose everything if I determined that you only changed because of money. That's, Lonnie started, then stopped. Actually, that's fair, that's really fair, because it means we can never stop trying. We can never coast. We have to genuinely be good children for the rest of your life. Exactly, I said. And that's the point. I don't want deathbed children. I don't want people who only show up when I'm dying. I want children who show up every day, who love me every day, who value me every day. Aura, my oldest granddaughter, spoke up. Grandma, can I say something? Of course, baby. I think this is brilliant, because it's not really about the money anymore, is it? It's about the kind of people we choose to be. You're not testing whether we love you for money. You're teaching us that we should love you regardless of money. And by the time you die, if we've truly learned that lesson, we won't even care about the inheritance. We'll just be grateful we had you in our lives. I felt tears in my eyes. Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly what I'm teaching you. After the meeting, my children stayed. We talked for hours about life, about family, about what matters. And then Spurgeon said something that shocked me. Mama, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 5 years ago. What is it? The reason I was so focused on your money. The reason I was so quick to believe you were poor and needed help. It wasn't just greed. It was fear. Fear of what? Fear that I'd end up like you and Dad, working my whole life, saving every penny, living frugally, never enjoying anything, and then dying with money in the bank but no memories, no experiences, no joy. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I was terrified of becoming you, so I convinced myself you were struggling so that I wouldn't have to face the fact that you and Dad had done everything right, that you'd built wealth the hard way, that you'd been successful. Because if I admitted that, I'd have to admit that I was failing by comparison. Oh, Spurgeon, I said softly. But these past 5 years I've learned something. You weren't just saving money. You were building a foundation. You were creating security. You were making choices so that later in life, now you could do whatever you wanted. travel, spend, enjoy. You played the long game, and I was playing the short game, spending everything, living for today, not planning for tomorrow. He wiped his eyes. You weren't sad and deprived like I thought you were. You were strategic, and now you're reaping the rewards. You're 77 and traveling the world. Meanwhile, I'm 54 and stressed about retirement because I haven't saved nearly enough. You were smarter than me, and instead of learning from you, I judged you. I'm sorry. I took my son's hand. Spurgeon, it's not too late. You have time to change your financial habits, to start saving, to plan for your future, and I'll help you. Not with money, you need to do this yourself, but with advice, with guidance, with support. Thank you, Mama, for everything, for the lessons, for the second chance, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. 1 week ago, I did something else my children didn't expect. I called them to my house and made an announcement. I've decided to tell you how much you're actually inheriting, right now, today, while I'm still alive. Why? Alberta asked. I thought we weren't supposed to know until you died. Because I've changed my mind, because I've watched you for 5 years, because I know who you are now, and I trust you. I pulled out updated documents. As of today, my estate is worth approximately $1.8 million. I've spent about $1.1 million over the past 5 years on living my life, on donations, on grandchildren's education funds, on making a difference. They nodded, no shock, no disappointment. They'd known I was spending money. After I die, after the standard charitable donations and the grandchildren's trust funds, you'll each inherit approximately $300,000. That's generous, Mama, Vester said. More than generous. But, I continued, there's something else, something I haven't told you. I pulled out another folder. Remember that rental property in Florida I told you about 5 years ago? The one worth $650,000, Lonnie asked. Yes, except I lied. It's not just one property. It's 4 properties, all in Florida, all paid off, all generating rental income. Together, they're worth about $2.8 million. My children's mouths dropped open. When I showed you that safe 5 years ago, I didn't show you everything. I showed you enough to make my point, but I kept some assets hidden. Because I needed to know, would you still treat me well if you thought I only had $2.7 million? Or would you only treat me well if you thought I had more? So you've been testing us this whole time? Spurgeon asked. Every single day. And you passed, all 4 of you, you changed, you grew. You became the people I raised you to be, and now I'm rewarding that. Those 4 properties, they're going to you. 1 property for each of you, fully paid off. Generating rental income that will give you financial security for the rest of your lives. But you said we'd each only get $300,000, Alberta said, confused. From my estate, after I die, but the properties? I'm giving those to you now, today, while I'm still alive, so I can see your faces, so I can celebrate with you, so I can teach you how to manage them, so I can make sure you understand they're not just assets, they're responsibilities. I handed each of them a folder. Spurgeon, your property is in Tampa. Alberta, yours is in Orlando. Vester, yours is in Miami. Lonnie, yours is in Jacksonville. Each property generates about $40. $0 a year in rental income. Managed properly, they'll provide steady income for decades. They stared at the folders, like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Why now? Spurgeon asked. Why not wait until you died? Because I want to see you succeed. I want to help you learn to manage these properties. I want to make sure you understand that wealth isn't just about having money, it's about managing it wisely. And I want to enjoy watching you build your own financial security. I smiled. Plus, I'm 77. I've learned that waiting to give gifts until you're dead is foolish. Give them while you're alive. See the joy, be part of the celebration. That's the real gift. Today, at 77 years old, I sit on my porch and look at the life I've built. Not just the financial life, though that's secure, but the life that matters, the relationships, the lessons taught, the character built. My children visit me not because they have to, but because they want to. They call me not to check a box, but because they miss hearing my voice. They include me in their lives not because they're afraid of losing an inheritance, but because they genuinely love me. I've spent over $1 million in 5 years on travel, on donations, on causes I believe in, on enjoying my life, on teaching my grandchildren, on making a difference. And I have no regrets, because I've learned something important. Money is only valuable when you use it for something meaningful. Whether that's securing your future, helping others, or enjoying your present, money is a tool, not a goal. My children thought I had nothing left. They were wrong, but not in the way they expected. I didn't have $2.7 million. I had $4.6 million. And I've used it wisely, to teach lessons, to build character, to help people, and yes, to spoil myself a little. But more than that, I have something money can't buy. A family that loves me, not for what I have, but for who I am. That's the real fortune, and it's the one I'm most proud of. Last night, all 4 of my children and all 8 of my grandchildren came over for Sunday dinner. It's our tradition now, every Sunday, the whole family, together. We sat around my new dining room table, the expensive one I bought when I decided to start living, and we laughed. We told stories, we made memories. At the end of the night, as everyone was leaving, Spurgeon pulled me aside. "Mama, I just want to say thank you." "For what, baby?" "For not giving up on us, for testing us, for teaching us, for showing us that we were becoming people we didn't want to be, for giving us a chance to become better. If you just quietly left us that money when you died, we'd have taken it and never learned anything. We'd have stayed the same terrible children we were. But you loved us enough to teach us, even when it hurt, even when it was hard. You loved us enough to make us better." I hugged my son, my firstborn, the one who'd hurt me the most but who'd also grown the most. "That's what mothers do," I said. "We love our children enough to teach them hard lessons. We love them enough to hold them accountable. We love them enough to let them fail so they can learn to succeed." "And we love you," he said. "Not for your money, not for what you can give us, but for who you are, for the woman who worked 3 jobs to raise us, for the woman who saved wisely so we'd have a better future, for the woman who tested us when we needed it, for the woman who forgave us when we didn't deserve it. We love you, Mama." As I watched my family leave that night, my children and grandchildren piling into their cars, waving goodbye, promising to call tomorrow, I thought about the journey we'd been on. From that moment 5 years ago when they sat in my living room pitying me, to this moment now when they truly loved me. They thought I had nothing left, but I had everything that mattered. And now, so do they. Wow, what an incredible journey from rejection to redemption. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think about family and money differently, we need you to take action right now. Smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful grandmother stories every single week. Turn on all notifications bell so you never miss our next amazing story. Comment below and tell us, where are you watching from? USA, UK, Canada, Jamaica, South Africa, Trinidad, Australia. We love our global family. Would you have tested your children like this? What did you think of Clemmie's conditions? Have you ever been judged based on what you have? What story should we tell next? Share this video with anyone dealing with greedy family members, parents wondering how to teach their children about money, anyone who's been judged based on their wealth or lack of it, families struggling with inheritance issues, anyone who needs to know their worth isn't defined by money. Thank you to our incredible viewers from around the world. From the USA, United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, Kenya, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Zimbabwe, Australia, and everywhere else. We see you, we appreciate you, and we love you. Remember Clemmie's lesson, your worth is not determined by what you have. Test people when they think you have nothing. That's when you see their true character. Money is a tool, not a goal. Give gifts while you're alive so you can see the joy. Teach hard lessons because that's what real love does. And never let anyone make you feel small because you don't flaunt your wealth. Stay strong, stay blessed, and remember, the real fortune is family that loves you for who you are, not what you have.